Hello folks, welcome to this episode of Rich Insights. I'm Don Rich, the head of investments for Esoterica Capital Markets. Today's topic is on the U.S. labor market. We just got the non-farm payroll numbers, the June payroll numbers on Friday, so I want to tear them apart and take a look at them. And the truth is there was something in those numbers for everyone, right? The non-farm payroll numbers were actually pretty good. They surprised to the upside. Of course, the range of expectations was huge. We really didn't know what to expect, but by and large, they turned out pretty good. All right, that's the good news. The healing continues. That's the good news. The bad news is when we dive into these numbers, the composition of these jobs is not ideal. All right, so the healing continues, but the places where we're seeing the most healing, not so encouraging. And also, we have initial claims. All right, those that are applying for first-time unemployment benefits, those continue to be concerning. So let's jump into that right now. All right, our initial claims, what I'm showing here is you can see before the coronavirus, the initial claims are about 200,000 per week. All right, this is weekly information. It's very high frequency. We were at about 200,000. We printed 1.4 million this most recent week. All right, and we can see here from the end of March to the most recent observation, there's been about 49 million people. 49 million people have applied for initial unemployment benefits. Now, that's disturbing, right? That's disturbing. In fact, perhaps the most disturbing thing about this chart is, let's look at the last 4 weeks here. Right, the last 4 weeks, you can see we were at 1.4 million, and then I don't know, let's call it 1.5, maybe 1.6. So this thing is not going down very fast any longer. This thing is sort of leveled off right now. That is a huge concern. That is something we all should be worried about because the claims just keep coming. So 49, let's call it 50 million people in total have at one time or another throughout this virus applied for unemployment. Again, that's out of a population of about 330 million people. So 50 out of 330, right? That's not good. Out of the 330, about half of those are of working age. So we're talking about 50 out of 160, 175, whatever half of 330 is. That's some disturbing numbers. Now, all of those 49 million people that have applied for initial benefits are not still unemployed. That's another metric. It's called continuing claims. And continuing claims are running about 19 to 20 million. All right, they're not running at the 49 to 50 million. So some of these people have gone back to work. So if you take 19 million out, over the 50 million, 49 million, whatever the number is there, you'll see about 37% recovery. 37% of the people appear to be back in the labor force. That's good news. You can say, well, there's almost 2/3 of the people that aren't back yet, but at least we're over 1/3 of the way there. Is the glass half empty or glass half full? I don't know. That depends on how you look at it. But as I said, the non-farm payroll numbers, for the most part, were pretty good. The problem was the composition. About 2/3 of the respondents, or 2/3 of the job gains, were in the retail and hospitality sector. Let's take a look at that right now. All right, so here we have the U6 and U3 unemployment rates here. All right, so U6 includes those that are underemployed. It's a broader definition of unemployment. Now, what we saw this most recent non-farm payroll print was that there was a big spike in what's considered to be involuntary part-time workers. All right, these are people who are underemployed. So you can see the U6 rate, again, that includes the underemployed, is now down to 18%. All right, so it's went from 23 down to 18. That's encouraging. Again, that's the good news. As we take that 18% back in history, though, we'll see that we're still somewhat worse off today than we were during the depths of 2008. Okay, that's the bad news. And again, U3, the narrower definition, is 11.1%. Now, the government itself cautions you a little bit on the 11.1% because the problem is people don't know how to classify themselves, and the different calculations handle these discrepancies differently. All right, so what am I talking about here? Furloughed workers, they're the big one. If you're furloughed, you're not working, right? But in the furloughed class, there's largely 3 groups. You can be furloughed and still being paid. All right, so a government agency calls you and says, are you employed? Well, I'm getting a paycheck, but I'm not going to work. I don't know. Some of them say yes, some of them say no. That's all right. So you can be furloughed and being paid. You can be furloughed and not being paid, but yet receiving a second paycheck, right? Most likely your health care benefits. And then you got to ask yourself, well, am I being paid? I mean, do I have a job? Do I not have a job? That's a gray area again. And then the other class are those that are furloughed and not being paid, but are guaranteed their back wages, right? These are particularly focused on state and local employees. I'm sorry, federal and state employees. So again, if you're not being paid and you're not working, do you still have a job when they call you and ask you if you know you're going to receive your back wages at some point, right? That's a difficult. So the government cautions that 11.1% that we're looking at here on the brown line, the 11.1% is probably too low. It's probably at least 12 to 12.5% because of this ambiguity. But anyway, what we want to do right now is take this 11.1% and break it down, all right, and do the various categories. So we're going to start here by age. I think this one's the most interesting one. So what we have here is the unemployment rate for what's called the youth unemployment rate, the 16 to 24-year-old crowd. You can see that's about 21%, right, just shy of 21%. And then we have 25 to 34-year-olds. That's about 12%, all right. So you go from 21% down to 12%. All right. Then you go 35 to 44, and you're down to about 9%. And 45 to 54, a little over 8%. Okay, so the older you are, the more likely you are to be employed. And that, again, you can see these lines historically. That has always been the case. That has always been the case. The problem with this chart is the youth unemployment rate. The youth unemployment rate. So let's go back and take a look at it again. This time I want you just to focus on the black line here. It's kind of easy because it's up here on top. This is the youth unemployment rate, the 16 to 24 crowd. Again, just shy of 21%, a big improvement, but look at this compared to history. And again, this history goes back to the 1970s. We are still far worse than anything we've ever explored. All right, now why is this a problem in particular? Well, the thinking, let's call it the perception, whether it's legitimate or not, is that young people are probably going to socially aggregate, especially if they don't have a job to go to. They're going to socially aggregate. And is that a reflection on our kids? We did that probably when we were at that age as well. You just do it. But of course, the problem with that is in the virus concerns. And, there's a second order effect. If kids don't have something to do, they're probably going to get in trouble. Yeah. Maybe that's being a little stereotypical, but nevertheless, so that is something to consider about. The youth unemployment rate is still high. It still should be a concern to everyone. All right, so again, we started with 11.1%. That was the U3 rate for the entire population, and we broke it down by age. So again, 11.1%. You can see the older age groups are below the 11.1, and the younger age groups are above. Right? That's the teeter-totter right now in terms of breaking that down. Okay, so that's the 11.1 broken down by age. Next, let's go to education. We got 4 categories of education here, right? Those without a high school diploma, right? That's our black line at 16.6%. Those with a high school diploma and no college, that's 12% unemployment. Those with a high school diploma and some post-secondary education, whether it's an associate degree, a vocational skill, a vocational diploma or vocational school or something, you can see that's 11%. And then if you have a bachelor's degree or more, up to a PhD, you can see it's 6.9. Okay. So the encouraging thing here is they've all come in. They've all come in. Okay. The most highly educated came in the least, right? The blue line here. The blue line came in the least. But again, it was starting from the lowest base. So part of that is to be expected. Now, what else do we see? Again, the same as the top chart, is even the improvement we've seen in the last couple months still leaves us worse off in all categories. All right? In all 4 categories here, we're worse off than we were during the depths of 2008. During the depths of 2008. We've started, right? The healing started, but we still have a long, long way to go. We're not even to the depths of 2008 yet. That should be a concern. When we see improvement, we think V-shaped recovery, everything's going to go back to normal in a heartbeat. We are still a long, long way from that. In fact, I had one of the viewers comment this week. He happens to be CEO of a corporation. And he was saying, he was really just confirming the national numbers, that they estimate between $1,000 and $3,000 additional cost per worker going forward. Between $1,000 and $3,000 per worker for the increased concern around the COVID virus. All right, so this is, for office buildings, you obviously got space workers. For assembly line workers, you have to, the improvements that are required there as well. $1,000 to $3,000 per worker in additional cost. Now, remember, this is at a time when earnings are coming down and the costs are going up. So you've got to imagine that this, the labor market is going to continue to be under pressure here as we go forward. So we've had some initial improvement and we've gotten very excited about it, but I'm suggesting that perhaps we've gotten too excited about it. So the last chart I want to show you is I want to break down that 11.1% now by race. By race. Okay, so you can see the highest unemployment rate based on this chart is the black line. So this is African Americans, and the unemployment rate there is 15.4%. Next highest is Hispanic and Latino at 14.5%. The purple line is Asian unemployed at nearly 14%. And then the Caucasian unemployment rate of, let's call it 10%, just over 10%. Okay, so you can see here, the biggest improvements this time are coming from the green line, right? The Hispanic and Latino crowd, and the orange line or brown line here, coming from the white crowd. So we are seeing improvements in all areas, but we're seeing much more in some areas. Now, what's interesting about this is we look back in history here. Look at the purple line here, the Asian unemployment rate versus the white unemployment rate. Asian unemployment rate used to be the lowest, or tended to be the lowest over time. So it's only had a small improvement. You see this purple line, the small improvement we see in this purple line compared to the brown line. Again, so there's some disproportionality going on here. So things continue to heal, right? That's the good news. Things continue to heal. But I hate to be a Debbie Downer. I'm just not seeing, what I want to see in these numbers. The numbers are improving. I'll give you that. But they're not improving in all of the areas that I'd like to see, right? The improvements largely coming from the lower cost places, right? The lower income workers are going back to work, right? So we're getting the train back on the tracks, but are we getting the train moving? That's really my concern here. All right. So again, then the labor numbers, the recent labor numbers, there's something for everyone there. You can find good news, you can find bad news there, but by and large, I'm still questionable. I'm still questionable. I'm not seeing enough good news yet. So that's our message for today. I'm Don Rich, and you've just experienced a rich insight. I hope you've enjoyed it. May your beer be colder than the company you keep. We'll talk again soon. Thank you.